prevent blisters when running in the desert? Being a podiatrist in the medical team at the Marathon des Sables, the legendary, in the Sahara Desert in April 2024, gave me a very unique insight into why runners in the desert struggle with blisters. This ultra run is considered to be one of the hardest foot races in the world, and I can honestly say, having seen it firsthand, that is absolutely true. Most participants were very well prepared, but foot and backpack blisters, which incorporated 78% of all admissions into the medical tent, were a constant issue. Due to my interest in preventing and treating blisters, I realised that so many could have been avoided. Hence, the content and intention of this blog are to help any future desert runners be more prepared and reduce the large percentage of blisters arriving in the medical tent. Blisters are multifactorial in cause and are the product of a combination of friction, pressure, moisture, lack of conditioning, bone movement, and indirectly heat, which creates sweat, increasing the moisture next to the skin. Recognising a hot spot on the skin early on will help prevent the blister from progressing to a large bubble blister. If this happens to you, then stop and dress this area with an island dressing. This will prevent the blister from progressing into a bubble blister. However, once a bubble blister has already developed, the blister needs to be drained and dressed for the runner to compete another day. To say that these blisters are painful would be an understatement, and it doesn't matter where they are, the most problematic ones were underneath the balls of the foot. Keeping the skin intact was crucial to the participants so they could complete another day. My role as a medic was to try and fix these presenting blisters and advise the participants on how to prevent them from worsening. Getting a blister on the first day makes the following running stages even more difficult than they already are. Preparation and having your medical blister kit means that you can self-treat, look after your feet. It is better than being too dependent on the medical tent and the materials provided, as it can get very busy sometimes in the medical tent. There are sections of the medical tent designed for self-care, so the materials are provided to the participants to use. The second section is an assisted blister care, which is one medic assisting 4 to 6 runners at the same time. The third section is complex blister care, which is a one-to-one medic care, as these blisters are too complicated to self-care. Hopefully from this blog, you will be able to take away helpful tips, advice, and products that you can either use beforehand, take with you, and the chances are high that you will be susceptible for blisters, as this event has more challenging variables than your everyday running at home. How to avoid pre-race blisters. I know it's hard to believe, but we even saw participants with blisters at the medical tent before they even started the event. The issue was their camp sandals. Most were new and had never been worn before the race. And although the skin on the participants' feet had been conditioned to their running shoes, it hadn't been to their camp sandals. And then the skin had consequently blistered. Preventing this problem by pre-wearing everything you take into the desert, including your camp sandals or slippers. You will wear them more than you think, so your feet must be conditioned to that footwear as well as your trainers. And a simple schoolboy error can start you off on the wrong foot, literally. General foot care in the prevention of blisters. Foot care may seem an obvious place to start for most people, but many runners have long, thick toenails and hard skin underneath their feet and around their toes. Unfortunately, when you start to run 250 kilometers in the desert, those specific areas of hard skin are prone to getting blisters underneath them, which are understandably and unbelievably painful and difficult to access. Long and thick toenails receive an increased pressure from the front of the shoe, which creates blisters under the nails, and losing the nail is highly likely. The solution to this predictable problem is self-care. Keeping the nails short, thin, and applying cream to both feet and improving skin quality in preparation for the event. If the nails or hard skin is too much for your self-care, then book an appointment to see a podiatrist before the race. They can do all of that for you. I guarantee this will eliminate many problematic blisters from the start. Preventing blisters by conditioning the skin. The skin is the largest organ of the body, and it's the one that we all take for granted. Given time, it adapts to all the unexpected forces applied to it. I appreciate that mimicking desert running in the UK is challenging. However, there are heat chambers around the country where one can train, preparing the skin and body for the rapid increase in temperature. The desert terrain can be reproduced in the UK, as there are challenging ascents and descents along beach running. This preparation allows foot and skin to adapt to the different forces and the circumstances of the desert. There are also training camps held in the Canary Islands, which can also help the body and skin adapt to the desert terrain and warmer temperatures. It is a head start, but a worthwhile one in preventing foot blisters. Using new products at a race. I was so surprised that many participants who had planned and trained their bodies for so long before this event brought new, untried, untested products into the desert, especially one known to be one of the hardest events to complete. My advice is always to try and test everything before you arrive in the desert, including blister prevention products, clothes, backpacks, socks and shoes. Don't pack them and hope for the best. Throwing in the kitchen sink rarely solves the problem, and what works for one doesn't always work for another. What footwear prevents blisters? Footwear is a massive subject that most competitors talk about, and this is where most of the blister problems arriving in the medical tent come from. I could hardly believe what I was seeing, and the solutions were often so simple. The biggest cause of foot blisters was incorrect shoe sizing. The blisters were located on the ends of the toes, the tops of the toes, in between the toes, under the nails, on the sides of the big toe and the little toe, and on the backs of the heels. That is a lot of blister locations from one problem: ill-fitting shoes. Shoe envy is the biggest problem here. Most runners like to look at other runners and adopt what they're wearing, especially if they're faster than them. The clear lesson here is that everyone is unique to themselves. Your skin, your feet, and how you run is bespoke to you. Purchasing running shoes should always be something that works for you and has worked for you for a long time. If you are not getting injured and running well without problems, why change what works? Looking for shiny new things doesn't always serve you, especially before a major race. I noticed a few footwear brands that everyone favoured, but most were still causing blisters, and in all cases, their feet were too big for the shoes. Therefore, friction, pressure while running will come with the footwear, creating blisters. I cannot tell you how many conversations I had daily about footwear shape and size. It was by far the most common subject I had with the competitors. The rule of thumb is such a simple technique that can be applied to all types of footwear. A thumb's width allowance is all you need, where you can feel the end of the longest toe, and it may not be the big toe, it may be the second or the third, and to where the shoe is finished. The shoe size is irrelevant. I always tell all patients that come into the clinic to ignore the size of the shoe and go with what fits. Footwear is being made worldwide, and continuity and consistency have been lost. Relying on the rule of thumb method for length is more reliable than the shoe size numbers. It may not be the big toe that's the longest, it could be the second or the third. This thumb width rule at the end of the shoe prevents the toes from hitting the front of the shoes when going downhill, preventing blisters at the end of the toe, top of the toe, and the toenails. The width of the footwear is also incredibly important. If the shoes are too small in the toe box area, they'll push the toes together, causing pinch blisters. In between toe blisters, underneath the toe blisters, sides of the toes, and both edges of the foot. You can tell when a foot is too wide, as the fabric bulges around where the little and the big toes are situated. You can feel that with your fingers, if the fabric is tight and taut when stretched over their sides. The depth of the shoe toe box is also important, especially if you suffer from clawed, retracted hammer toes. Look at the shoes from the side view and see how deep it is, and access the material to determine if it is soft or forgiving or hard, which could then create increased pressure. Seams in the fabric can also cause increased pressure on the toes, and please avoid them over the toe area. Quite a lot of the participants' feet in the first couple of stages started to swell, meaning more fluid will be present in the foot itself. And from a sizing point of view, the foot will be a more generous size and width, and this should be a consideration when buying shoes. As you can see from the photo, this runner ended up cutting the front of his shoes off to accommodate his toes. And I am so pleased to say he did actually finish the race. When footwear shopping before this event, ensure you go at the end of the day or the end of a long run. That way the foot will be at its biggest it can be during the day. Otherwise, trying out shoes first thing in the morning when your feet are not warm and swollen is not an accurate representation of how you will be at the end of the day in the desert. Laces and lace locking in preventing blisters. I was so surprised to learn that many runners participating in the MDS didn't know how to lace lock and had never considered a lacing system on their footwear. The lack of lace locking with these participants caused many blisters at the ends of the toes, balls of the feet and back of the heels. Why should it play such an important role in preventing blisters? Well, locking your laces at the ankle mortise joint means the foot is retained within the shoe, preventing it from moving forward. This ensures less movement of the foot, which are the bones and the soft tissues, reducing friction and pressure against the skin, which are all major contributors to blisters. There are 3 different ways to lace lock, and all 3 are shown in the video. Most sport-related footwear has a double eyelet at the top of the lacing system at the ankle. By the addition of lace locking, the lacing system further down the shoe can then be rethreaded and loosened. So when the foot swells up in the heat, which it inevitably will, the shoe can be slackened off without the issue of foot movement within the shoe. Gaiters and the prevention of blisters. These are an essential piece of equipment for desert running and walking, as the presence of sand next to the skin on the feet will cause blisters, creating open wounds. Sand is incredibly abrasive and unforgiving to the skin. Most participants used Velcro to attach the gaiters to the shoes, and sadly we saw very many malfunctioning gaiters in the desert. Unfortunately, with the gaiters that were glued to the shoe, the extreme desert heat melted the glue and they lost the adhesion to the shoe. Most ended up with half attached and half off, and despite trying to tape them back onto the shoe, a complete resolution couldn't be found, as the sand would inevitably find its way into the shoe, blistering and rubbing the skin, a bit like sandpaper. The gaiters that had the Velcro sewn onto the fabric fared much better than the glued version of Velcro. Sadly, there was a trade-off with sewing Velcro directly onto the shoe fabric, as it tightened the material on the top, reducing its natural stretch. The outcome of having a tighter material like Velcro attached to the shoe meant it restricted the natural stretch of the shoe fabric, almost replicating another seam around the shoe, from the toe box area to the heel. Velcro material gives less than original stretchy material. Essentially, the shoes ended up smaller in width and depth than when they were first purchased. This needs to be considered when buying trainers, otherwise the smaller shoe can cause blisters in the toe area of the foot because of its width being reduced. Although this seems like such a small factor, it can almost be overlooked. Once runners are in the desert conditions and their feet swell, these small factors become a huge issue with blisters around the toe area of the foot. Kevin Bradley, who is on Facebook under Alex Shoe Repairs, he sews Velcro onto the shoes, and his work certainly stood the test of time. Some companies like Raid Life have trail shoes and gaiters that have already fit for purpose on the desert shoes. The gaiter is attached higher up around the lacing system, which already negates the issue with the Velcro decreasing the size of the shoe fabric, with the added benefit of Velcro not being knocked off by the shoe hitting a rock when running. These are relatively new, but could well solve the issues around gaiter malfunctions, and the link is below for more information. The right socks for the prevention of blisters in the desert. The types of socks and footwear discussed in the medical tent can greatly improve blister prevention. When running in a hot climate, all socks should be made of Coolmax or merino wool. This is due to their ability to wick moisture away from the skin. A liner sock and an outer sock is the best combination for running in this event, provided the shoes have adequate room for the 2 layers of socks. I'll discuss in dingy toe socks first, as many runners wore these. They are really good at moisture wicking socks. The Coolmax and the merino wool material absorb the sweat and wick it away from the skin, decreasing the moisture next to it and reducing the moisture producing blisters. The toe sock design prevents blister formation in between the toes. However, there is a drawback that most runners don't factor in. If there isn't enough width room in the shoes, the extra material in dingy socks will increase the width size of the toe area and cause blisters due to the lack of room in the toe box. At this point, I need to redirect you back to the shoe fitting section above, as these socks can be great with the correct footwear width. The dingy socks are thinner than the outer sock, and I always prefer the outer sock to have a bit more cushioning on the sole of the sock. This helps with extra shock absorption, reducing the pressure on the balls of the feet. It's no secret my favourite outer sock is Darn Tough. Less known about out of the USA, but very comfortable, durable, moisture wicking, cushioning and guaranteed for life. My preferred liner sock is Armour Skin. Surprisingly, only one person participating in the MDS that I knew about wore these in the desert. He was quite kind enough to give me some feedback. He had used the dingy socks on the first day and got blisters straight away. He then went on to wear Armour Skin liners, which stopped the blisters, but just became too tight to his already swollen feet. He had wished he had sized up due to his swollen feet, but I think, in retrospectively, if he'd worn them on day one, that swelling would have been avoided. Armour Skin liner socks do feel a bit strange at first, which is why I think puts people off using them. The material sticks to the skin, and by doing so, it reduces the friction of the shoe onto the skin. The material has a bit of compression in the fabric, so sizing is critical. If you're on the cusp of 2 sizes or have wide-fitting feet, then go up a size. Always be aware that they need to be in contact with the skin all the time, and they can't be loose on any areas of the foot. These liner socks would have been the majority of prevention of foot blisters into the desert if they were worn from day one. They would have stopped most of the feet from swelling. As you can see from the photograph from Mark's experts, when he was running in the Dragonbacks race in 2017 and then in 2019, the difference between the 2 completion dates was that he wore Armour Skin socks in 2019. But like with everything else, you have to try these liner socks out before the race. One pair will last between 250 and 300 miles. If you normally get blisters between the toes, try the Armour Skin liner toe socks or use the standard Armour Skin liner with alpaca woven through the toes. It is advantageous to have the armour skin material next to the skin, and the toes are separated simultaneously, preventing blisters around the toe area and on all contact areas of the foot. Armour skin liner socks and darn tough outer socks and the correct size shoes are the perfect sock-shoe combination for preventing blisters in the desert. Compression sleeves and blisters. You may wonder how compression sleeves can cause foot blisters. I was certainly a little surprised about this too. Quite a lot of the participants wore compression sleeves on their legs and arms. I have not considered them before with any opinion. There is a distinct lack of medical evidence to support the benefits of using them, but in the same breath, professional research has not found them to be detrimental to your health either. In fact, the placebo effect is considered to be highly beneficial to the runners. However, there may be a pinch point for some runners. Ultra running in the desert could be that critical point, as they become more disadvantaged because they cause fluid retention in the feet and the hands after running long distances in extreme heat. The compression effect of the sleeves after a long period of running in extreme heat restricted the body's fluid returning back to the bloodstream, behaving almost like a mild tourniquet. The side effect of this was the increase in size of the runner's feet and hands, which became very voluminous. This fluid retention increased the size of the foot, which then causes pressure blisters on the feet, as the shoes were now a smaller size for a larger foot. This is what I noticed on the third day, which was the 80-kilometre stage in duration. Like I said earlier, the more medical evidence or research needs to be done, and therefore it will become hard to advise either way. But from a common sense point of view, I certainly think it's a factor to take on board. If compression sleeves are not advantageous to you, then is there a reason for wearing them? However, the compression sleeve should always be removed as soon as the stage has been completed, and resting with your feet up will help the lymphatic system drain the excessive fluid back into the bloodstream. Gait mechanics and foot blisters. This section will surprise you the most, but peak pressure load causing blisters are what I see most of the day in my MSK clinic. The third day of the MDS was the 80-kilometre long stage. The terrain had many ascents, and this was the worst day for foot and backpack blisters that we saw in the medical tent. From a biomechanical point of view, when running uphill, the body's positioning and centre of pressure changes, increasing forefoot loading. This increase in pressure on the balls of the feet is the trigger for causing blisters over the metatarsal heads, and these are agonising from the moment you start with them. For me, the thought of running for another 3 days after this had happened would be soul destroying. I honestly don't know how the runners managed it. If you have struggled with blisters on the soles of your feet and tried everything to stop them, there might be a mechanical reason for that. Visiting a podiatrist for pressure gait analysis will help you determine why blisters are developing. This bit of technology is useful and a fascinating insight into what the foot does in motion. I use mine daily in clinic. The pressure gait analysis indicates high pressure loads on the weight-bearing areas of the foot, which then can cause blisters. These peak pressure loads can also suggest that there might be a pre-stress area on the foot, giving you the heads up before an injury might present, and also preventing blisters before they have a chance to develop. The photo with the patient's feet on the pressure gait analysis photo presents blisters underneath and in between the little toe on the right foot. This problem only happened when he ran over 10 kilometres. He had tried most over-the-counter products but still needed help. The pressure gait analysis indicated the high pressure area on the right foot under the 5th metatarsal head when the forefoot was loading, and this was precisely the area of the foot that he struggled with blisters. After identifying where the problem is, the next stage is working out why it's happening. A limb length discrepancy was the issue for this particular patient, combined with hip and pelvis muscle weakness. The foot had tried to compensate for this, which is why the reason for the peak pressure loads on the 5th MPJ and the blister formation. With an exercise and strengthening program for the hips and pelvis, and orthotics incorporating a heel raise, this runner is now blister-free and running faster. Podiatrists who are interested in MSK or biomechanics will probably have a pressure gate analysis system in their clinic. The link is here for all of those gait motion clinics around the UK, should you want to book an appointment with them. Most runners are surprised at a podiatrist skill set. We are lower limb problem solvers. Here's the link for the pressure gate clinics in the UK, but they do have clinics in other countries that are not shown in the link. Contact them anyway if you reside elsewhere from the UK. Taping the foot to prevent blisters. Quite a few of the competitors who had participated in previous years had come prepared with prevention taping of the feet. And this method certainly works for quite a few of them. The tape reduces the shear against the skin, and this reduces the chances of blisters, especially in the balls of the feet, which helps those extreme distance and uphill, downhill terrain stages. I prefer the application of 2 layers of tape on the balls of the feet, especially in the desert, while keeping a lighter tape like Hyperfix to secure the K-tape around the sides of the foot or through the toes. Being careful not to apply too much tension, allowing for the inevitable fluid retention. Taping the toes can be a bit fiddly, but with practice it gets easier. The lighter medical tapes are better for using on the toes, in application and comfort, but a lot of the competitors like the heavier K-tapes and zinc oxide tape. I prefer placing the first strip over the top of the toes from the front to the back, and then wrapping the 3rd and the 4th tape layer around the toe. This technique prevents the likelihood of the edges of the tape irritating the neighbouring toe into getting a blister. Shown below are the tapes that you can use for desert running. It becomes a personal preference, but there is a bit of science behind it too. The material, adhesive, and stretch of the tape are important. Most of the available K-tapes are cotton-based, and as we already know, cotton retains moisture next to the skin, which is a major factor in blister formation. KT Pro and Extreme are made from synthetic materials and wick away the moisture from the skin. I recommend this type of blister prevention tape as it reduces the risk of blistering. The KT blister tape is smaller in size and more suitable for toe taping. The adhesive on the tape varies from brand to brand, and some have heavy sticky adhesive, which is more suitable for desert running, as the glue needs to withstand the high temperatures and the increase in sweatiness of the skin. These are all important factors that affect the performance of the tape whilst competing. If you've had a skin reaction to the tape adhesives, especially zinc oxide plaster, like me, then Haplaband tape would work for you. I use it in clinic for taping, and it works really well without the irritation of the aggressive adhesives. It also comes in various widths, but mainly I use the 5cm version. To reduce the need for scissors, you can pre-cut and shape the tapes at home before you actually go to the event. Skin glue can actually be used on the skin before applying the tape, which will help the tape adhere to the skin. However, this comes with a warning. The skin glue, like Skin Tact, which is what my preference is, needs a pair of gloves to apply it, as it is so sticky, and you don't need sticky fingers in the desert, nor a sticky foot either. Make sure all the skin of the foot is covered with a tape, or apply 2 Tums blister shield on the tape and the skin afterwards. This product is fantastic at friction-reducing powder that is not self-limiting. Always use the tack-away wipes on the skin after the removal of the tape, which will remove all the traces of the skin glue. Because if it's left on, it also can cause blistering. All these products are light enough to carry in your backpack. Compound tincture of benzoin, or TB-Co as we know it as, is an old-fashioned skin glue, which is still used today, and many runners use TB-Co for taping. It is okay to use. I trained with it many years ago, but the product still comes with a bit of a warning. It is prone to causing skin irritations and allergies, as shown in the photo of the runner in the MDS when he had a slight reaction before he went in the race, which then increased the more times he used it. So use the product before an event many times to ensure that there is no reaction. However, I do prefer Skin Tact as it is the modern day medical skin glue equivalent without any of the problems with skin reactions. Use and pour on insoles to prevent blisters on the soles of the feet. Reducing high peak pressure loads on the soles of the feet can also be prevented by using pour on insoles, a fantastic long-lasting material that can shock absorb and redistribute the high pressure areas on the foot. If the shoe has enough room, I suggest using the 6mm high performance pour on or 3.2mm as a compromise. If the available footwear room is at a minimum, remove the existing insoles to accommodate the pour on. I cannot stress enough how simple this insole is, but how it can help decrease the shock absorption to the foot and prevent those painful balls of the foot blisters. Engo patches and preventing blisters. These patches may look like they wouldn't change anything, let alone prevent blisters, but their frictionless surface will reduce the shear against the skin from footwear. They can be applied anywhere on the inside of the shoe, preventing friction on the tops and the sides of the toes, balls of the feet and heels. As a double blister preventative measure, large oval or rectangular Engo patches can be applied as a pressure and friction reducing surface on the pour-on insoles, where the balls of the feet or heels contact the insole. Both these methods will reduce the chances of blisters on the balls of the feet. Backpack blisters. Although foot blisters were the major problem arriving in the medical tent, there was also other problems, such as blisters and open wounds due to the backpacks constantly banging on the skin of the lower back and shoulders. These areas were causing huge amounts of problems for the participants. There were large painful wounds and had to be constantly redressed every day, as sweating would add to the issue. Apart from reducing the weight and length of these backpacks, pre-taping the areas with K-tape would be advisable. This will, at the very least, reduce a bit of shear on the skin. I cannot stress how important it is to have the right backpack, alongside its weight. If it's too long, it causes problems with the lower back, constantly irritating the skin, and if its weight increases, the severity of the problem. I know that it's been recommended to keep the weight between 7 and 8 kilos, and now I know why that anything heavier will cause inevitable problems with the back. Adding cushioning material or Engo patches to the shoulder areas in contact with the skin will help redistribute the pressure and friction next to the skin. Here's my advice on what to try to prevent blisters before arriving at a desert ultra running event. Armorskin socks. An Armorskin sock liner would definitely be first on the list to wear as a liner sock, either the original or with the toes in, dependent on the blisters that you tend to struggle with. An outer sock, merino or Coolmax sock has got to be there to wick the sweat away from the skin. Correct footwear. What a massive cause of blisters. Please read the section on footwear and choose a pair that's been worn for a while and that you're familiar with and that you've trained with. Gaiters. Make sure the gaiters have a secure fit without glue. and that you've tried them, and they haven't tightened the fabric around the shoe, making it a smaller shoe. Taping. Take a taping material with you that you've used before, either pre-cut or shaped, with a pair of small scissors while you were there. Use 2 Tom's Blister Shield powder over the tape to further reduce the friction of the tape, and this also stops the tape rucking and peeling at the edges. Pour on. Replace your insoles with high performance pour on to increase that shock absorption and reduce the peak pressure loads under the balls of the feet. Small thing makes a massive difference. Island dressings of various shapes and sizes with extra tape to secure the skin. These are such an undervalued but essential dressing for all stages of blisters, especially the hot spots. Do not take hydrocolloid dressings in. Most of you will know them as Compeed, as they tend to melt due to the high temperatures in the desert. Engo patches. Take a selection of Engo patches, as you never know which area of the shoe may create pressure and friction to the skin. They are super light in your backpack and invaluable if you get the last minute blister problems that you weren't expecting. The most important bit is the conditioning of training. Train your feet and legs to go up hills, to go up staircases, to prepare the skin for the forces that be put upon it. That is a huge, huge important contribution to blister prevention.